join them together. So what then I need to do, the other thing I need to have in my equipment is some slip. Now slip, all slip is diluted, watered down clay that's been diluted with, as I say, with water, or you can use vinegar. Vinegar is particularly effective if you've got clay that's gone quite dry. The two parts have gone quite dry before you put them together, and vinegar is very good at helping them bond. So a little bit of that. So then I'm going to use my fork to score the top, basically make it rough, and I do it in a sort of crisscross way. Again, I'm not going to press too hard. I just want to make that surface quite rough. Say these kind of tools that we have, they have little serrated like teeth at the top, are just as effective. So it doesn't really matter which one you have. Clay, when it's damp, will stick together very, very easily. Like if I had to put these two balls of clay together, I do that, they've stuck together. But as they dried out, if that's all I had done, they would just fall apart. Okay, so it fools you, clays, but you've got to be very thorough when you join things together. So what we try and remember is the scoring and the slipping. So, and with the slip, don't try and do your best painting techniques, just dab a little bit on. If the clay's quite soft, you don't need much at all. Okay, so I'm just dabbing those on there, just a little bit of the slip. And then to join these two halves together, I'm going to cradle each side in my hands. I'm going to put them together, and then I'm going to try very slightly turn my hands in opposite directions, applying a reasonable amount of pressure. Obviously if I press too hard, I'm going to squash the clay, but as you do that, you will feel the clay start to grip. Start to grip to the two halves. Okay. When I think I've done enough of that, I can look at the parts I've joined together, and if one half seems to be bulging more than the other, I work that across. That's the part I work across, and I can do that with my thumb, on my fingers. And to begin with, I'm not worried about being super careful and super neat. Again, cradle the piece in your hand so you don't flatten it, and then the pot doesn't expand. You can also use the other end of one of these green tools, or we also have some rounded wooden tools if you prefer to work in that way. Again, this is a part that you could spend an awfully long time on to make it nice and smooth. One thing that you must remember is that you have now enclosed air inside this piece. Okay, so it looks a bit like, what would you say, a potato. Somewhere, depends on what you're going to make from this point, but somewhere you must have a hole. When this dries off and it's put in the kiln, it will be fired to a high temperature, and those scientists amongst you will know that air expands in heat. So if you leave the air trapped in there, it will expand and the thing will explode. So not only will it spoil your pottery piece, but it will also break those around you. So you've got to be very, very careful. So that's why traditionally what we should do when we start with a piece of clay is to knead it, to make sure that the piece of clay out. So I'm just in case I forget, I'm going to use something like this and just make a hole, so I know that will be fixed later. Okay, you've got your basic shape. Again, this clay is quite firm, but again, if it's a little bit softer, have a cloth or something nearby where you can cradle the piece of clay and hopefully it won't flatten as it rests down on the rest there. So you now have to make a decision. It's entirely up to you. My favourite thing to make are elephants. So as you can see the basic body of here, and I've just added ears, a trunk and a nose, and a little tail at the back. Any kind of animal can be made. So the pig, the ears a little bit different, but again the basic body shape. Popular thing, as I showed you before, are making faces. That's a reasonably realistic one, or you might want to be a bit more expressive. And this is a head or face that somebody's made before. Another one here. That's obviously been decorated. Nice piece. But you could also, if you wish, do something a little bit more less realistic, less traditional looking. I mean, this is based on it's a bit like a pineapple, but it's a nice, interesting little shape. So that's up to you. The whole point is for you to explore the possibilities of making a thumb pot so you have the basic knowledge that you could use later. We're going to be teaching you different methods as well, and it may be that as you go through your unit that you use a few different methods to make the piece that you want. So I'm going to make an elephant here. So first thing I need to do are to make the different parts that will go on. So again, always before you start with a piece of clay, roll it in a ball, keep your hands moist with your damp sponge, again not wet because you don't want things to go any softer. So what I'm going to do with this very quickly is to make a little bit of a tube. That'll be a small elephant's trunk. So that is ready here. I'm going to flatten the base of the trunk. Again, you will spend more time than I will. I'm rushing through this. So I've got my trunk ready. The other thing I need to make are ears. And again, this was a ball of clay. But I find with making ears, it's much better to make two at the same time. You'll see why now. Those of you that have drawn ears or anything on a person, you get one perfectly right and then you try and do the second one from scratch and it doesn't work. So we're just going to have some little ears. So I've just made that, and to make my ears now, I'm just going to cut that in half. So I should hopefully have two matching ears. So I could spend a little time manipulating those, but I'm not. So I've got ears ready here. And then I need to make legs. And again, I start with a ball of clay, and I will roll that piece of clay, and I will try and make a nice, even, cylindrical shape. So again, I would spend more time doing that. Got my base, and then I would probably measure that and then cut it up into 4 equal pieces, so I end up with 4 legs. That's the way I would do it. I've actually spent a little bit more time, and I've got 4 ready here. Now, if your clay is soft, it's a good idea to be making your pieces if it's upside down. This is one that I've already made. And this is drying off upside down. It's cradled in that piece if I let it dry. That way, because it's soft, the legs would sink into the body and it would look a bit distorted. So we'll just put that one there so that can stay to dry off. So I've got my main body, and the first thing I'm going to do is to choose which end the trunk will go. If you have a thinner end, well, it's probably a good idea to put the trunk there, or you can start to manipulate the shape a little bit if you want a thinner part. You could continue and continue. I've known people make fish or dinosaurs with this method by gently stretching the things ahead. So what I'm going to do is, that's where my trunk's going to go. I'm going to rough it, score it. I'm then going to score the part of the trunk that is going to touch the body. I'll just have a quick look. Again, I'm not being too careful. Might be a strange looking elephant. Now again, that just stays there. But remember, as it dries off, it will fall off. And this is the common mistake. People don't spend enough time joining. So again, make sure they are scored, that they are rough. And again, touch of slip. You don't need a lot if the clay is quite soft. And then put it in place, but it's not like applying super glue where you just press it and keep it in place. You've got to rotate it slightly, wiggle it slightly until you start to feel it grip. Okay? And then let's clean this tool. You can either use your little finger or you can use a tool to smooth that on. What you're trying to do is to avoid anybody seeing the join. So you're trying to fool the person into thinking that this is all one continuous piece of clay. And again, use your fingers, you can use a tool. Don't start using a damp sponge to smooth it, because that will just make the clay softer and it will start to distort. It's very tempting to do that because you get results very quickly, but keep using it with your dry tool or your dry fingers. Okay, so we've got the trunk on, just about. Now I'm going to think about where my ears might go, and actually my ears going backwards, I think. So they might go there, and there. I'm looking at this from the opposite side to you, so I'm hoping it works. Then what you can do, you can use a knife or a wooden tool or something